Hello everyone. This is Six Path Weeb, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we continue our fanfiction series with an exciting twist. What if Naruko ate 2 devil fruits? Part 2. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. All content on this channel is created for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any anime footage used in these videos. Full credit goes to the original creators and copyright holders. Now, without wasting any more time, let's dive straight into the story. Somewhere near Arlong Park. Kurama, I think we're getting closer, Naruko said softly, narrowing her bright blue eyes as she looked ahead. I can feel a strong energy. And it seems like something important is happening nearby. She tilted her head, studying the unusual building in the distance. What an odd place. I think that's where all the commotion is, Kurama replied in her mind. Just then, a distant rumble echoed through the air. That confirms it. Naruko grinned. All right then, full speed ahead. In a flash, she raced forward and arrived just in time to see a boy with a small scar under his left eye tumble back onto the ground, stretching in a way that made Naruko blink in surprise. Whoa! He can stretch? That must be Luffy, she thought curiously. Nearby, a large figure lifted a chunk of broken ground, clearly intending to throw it. Naruko's expression sharpened. That doesn't look safe. She quickly formed a few hand signs. Vacuum air burst. She called, sending gentle but precise gusts of wind that shattered the heavy slab into harmless pieces before it could land. Everyone paused, startled by the sudden help. That would be me, Naruko said, crouching lightly on a ledge. Her hat shaded her face, but her cheerful grin was easy to hear in her voice. She adjusted her hat, revealing her whisker-like cheek marks and sparkling eyes. My name is Naruko Namikaze, she said brightly. And I came because. Well. She glanced at Luffy and laughed. I'd like to join your crew. Luffy blinked, then broke into a wide smile. Really? Why? Naruko tapped her chin thoughtfully. For a few reasons. I've heard stories about you from someone important to me, and I was curious. Plus, I heard about your amazing friends too. She glanced around warmly. But mostly, I just think it would be fun to travel together. The group exchanged surprised looks, but Luffy simply laughed. You seem interesting. Just then, the large figure tried to interrupt again, but Naruko stepped forward calmly. With a swift movement, she redirected him away from everyone, guiding him safely out toward the water without harm. The others stared in amazement. Geez, Naruko said lightly, brushing her hands off. That guy sure makes a lot of noise. Luffy laughed loudly, clearly amused. A moment later, the opponent tried once more, but Naruko simply sidestepped with ease, letting him stumble into the empty building instead. She sighed gently. You know, she said calmly, you don't have to keep doing this. Everyone here just wants to live peacefully. Something in her voice carried weight, not fear, but quiet strength. The figure hesitated, then finally retreated, leaving the area at last. For a moment, everything was silent. And then the villagers began to cheer. It's over. Someone called joyfully. Smiles spread everywhere. Relief filled the air like sunlight after a storm. Naruko turned back to Luffy and his friends, her expression soft again. Well, that worked out nicely. Soon after, another troublemaker appeared, trying to take advantage of the situation, but this time the villagers stood together. With Luffy's presence and Naruko's calm confidence, the problem was quickly resolved without any harm. Kokoyashi Village, a few hours later. The celebration was lively, full of laughter and music. But Naruko sat quietly at a small table, sipping a drink and watching the joy around her. You know, a gentle voice said, you could join the party. Naruko smiled slightly. I've had my fair share of celebrations, she replied. I like watching others enjoy themselves too. She turned to see a girl with short orange hair sitting beside her. Oh. You're the one who had Luffy's hat earlier, Naruko said with a playful grin. You must be important to him. Nami crossed her arms, though a small smile tugged at her lips. Maybe. So. If you're really joining us, tell me about yourself. Naruko leaned back, thinking for a moment. All right, but you have to tell me your story too afterward. Nami nodded. Well, Naruko began, her voice calm, I come from a place very far away. Growing up wasn't always easy. I felt alone a lot of the time. But I also met a few people who changed everything for me. Her expression softened with gratitude. They believed in me, trained me, and helped me become stronger, not just in power, but in heart too. Thanks to them, I learned that no matter where you start, you can choose what kind of person you become. Nami listened quietly, her eyes thoughtful. Naruko smiled brightly again. And now, I want to keep exploring, meet new friends, and go on amazing adventures. Nami studied her for a moment. Then gave a small, genuine smile. All right, she said. I think you'll fit in just fine. Naruko laughed. Good. Because I already like this crew. Just then, the cozy tavern began to fill with the rest of the Straw Hat crew. Laughter and chatter spread through the room as everyone gathered together. Zoro was the first to approach Naruko, curiosity shining in his eyes. Hey, Naruko, was it? He asked. She nodded, her bright whisker-marked cheeks lifting with a friendly smile. Zoro crossed his arms thoughtfully. I'll be honest, I'm curious. How strong are you, and what kind of training did you go through? The room grew quiet as others leaned in, eager to hear her answer. Naruko blinked, then chuckled softly. Well, if I had to say. She tapped her chin playfully, maybe around the level of a vice admiral, or a little stronger. A wave of surprise swept through the tavern. Even Zoro raised an eyebrow. That would put you just below an admiral, he said. Naruko nodded easily. Sounds about right. I haven't seen many admirals up close, though. But I did train with some incredible people growing up. She smiled warmly. Let's just say I had some very strong mentors who taught me a lot. The crew exchanged amazed looks, but before anyone could ask more, Luffy burst into laughter. Shishishi. Then it's settled, you're definitely part of the crew now. Naruko laughed along with him, her eyes sparkling. The music picked up again, and the tavern returned to its lively cheer. As the evening wound down, Naruko stepped outside for some fresh air. Nami followed, gently linking her arm with Naruko's. I owe you a story, Nami said softly. Walk with me? Naruko nodded, listening quietly as they strolled through the peaceful village. Nami spoke about her past, her voice sometimes wavering, but Naruko stayed beside her, offering comfort with a gentle presence. When Nami grew emotional, Naruko wrapped her in a reassuring hug. You're safe now, Naruko said kindly. And you won't have to face anything alone anymore. Nami smiled, her heart feeling lighter. The next morning, Naruko woke early, as she always did. The village was calm, with birds singing softly in the distance. She prepared a warm drink and stretched, enjoying the quiet. Up already? Nami asked, walking in. Naruko grinned. Habit from training. I like mornings, they feel full of possibilities. When do you think we'll set sail? Naruko asked. Nami laughed. Whenever our captain decides. You should go find him. Naruko nodded and headed out, soon spotting Luffy happily eating a mountain of food. Well, that's impressive, she said with a giggle, sitting across from him. After chatting for a while about strength and dreams, Naruko asked, So, Captain, when are we leaving? Later today, Luffy said confidently. Everyone's getting ready. Naruko smiled. Then I'll be ready too. Soon, the crew gathered aboard the Going Merry. The sea sparkled under the sun, and excitement filled the air. Set sail. Nami called. Naruko stood at the railing, her hair dancing in the breeze. She felt a warm sense of belonging. Adventures awaited them, new places, new friends, and countless stories yet to be told. As the ship glided forward, Naruko closed her eyes for a moment and smiled. This was only the beginning of something wonderful. About 2 hours later. Sir, we're going to have to ask you and your friend to leave the casino, a large guard said politely but firmly. Naruko grinned and gave a small, good-natured sigh. Okay. Let me just put my money away. She pulled out a scroll and carefully sealed her winnings inside it. Nami clung to her arm, eyes sparkling with amazement, as they stepped outside. I told you, casinos don't like me, Naruko said with a cheerful laugh. They began walking back toward the ship when, suddenly, Luffy came soaring overhead, with a determined marine captain chasing after him. Naruko paused, then shook her head with a half-smile. Looks like things just got busy. Nami, hold on. Nami nodded quickly, wrapping her arms around Naruko. With light, agile steps, Naruko leapt across rooftops, moving swiftly but gracefully. Instead of joining the chase, she simply called out loudly, Hey! Everyone, back to the ship. Her voice carried across the buildings, clear and confident. Luffy turned midair and grinned. Got it. One by one, the crew made their way back. Naruko reached the ship with Nami and set her down gently. "Captain," she said, folding her arms playfully, "I think we've stayed long enough." Luffy nodded enthusiastically. "Then it's time. Let's head to the Grand Line. Set sail," he called. The ship began to move, but Usopp suddenly looked around. "Wait. Where's Zoro?" Naruko shaded her eyes and looked toward the city. In the distance, she spotted him heading in the wrong direction, as usual. She smiled. "I'll get her." With a quick hand motion, a small shimmering portal appeared beneath Zoro, gently lifting her and guiding her safely onto the ship. A second portal opened on deck, and Zoro tumbled out, looking surprised but unharmed. Everyone blinked, then burst into laughter. Zoro crossed her arms, trying to look serious. "What are you all laughing at?" Naruko chuckled. "Just glad you made it." Before long, the crew gathered together as Nami began explaining their next route. "If we want to reach the Grand Line," she said, "we have two choices. One is the Calm Belt, but there's no wind or current there, and it's filled with enormous sea creatures. The safer route is Reverse Mountain." Naruko nodded thoughtfully. "I've read about it, but I've never seen it myself." "Well," Luffy said, pointing ahead with excitement, "now we will." The crew cheered. Later, as the sea breeze picked up, Naruko turned to Zoro with a friendly smile. "Want to train a little? You said you want to become the greatest swordswoman in the world, right? I can share a few things I've learned." Zoro's eyes lit up immediately. She stood and nodded. "I'd like that." They moved to a clear space on the deck. Instead of a harsh duel, the two practiced carefully, exchanging controlled movements and learning from each other. Naruko demonstrated balance, rhythm, and flow, while Zoro focused on refining her stance and timing. "Try to move like water," Naruko said gently. "Strong, but flexible. If you adapt, you'll grow even faster." After some time, Zoro sat down, catching her breath. "You're really skilled." Naruko rubbed the back of her head with a sheepish smile. "I've trained a lot. But you're improving quickly too." She handed Zoro a small bundle of scrolls. "These might help. There's one in there about movement and flow, it's especially useful." Zoro accepted them with a quiet nod. "Thank you." Naruko waved her hand lightly. "That's what friends are for." As the sun began to lower, the crew gathered again at the front of the ship. In the distance, a towering mountain rose from the sea. "Reverse Mountain," Nami announced. "Here we go," Luffy shouted. The ship surged forward, carried by a powerful current. Everyone held on as they climbed higher and higher, the wind rushing past them. Naruko held onto the railing with one hand and kept Nami steady with the other. She laughed, her eyes bright with excitement. At the peak, the ship lifted slightly before beginning its descent. Then, suddenly, something enormous appeared ahead. The crew stared in astonishment. "Is that a whale?" Usopp asked, wide-eyed. Naruko leaned forward, her expression filled with curiosity rather than fear. "It's incredible." The great creature rested calmly in the water, peaceful and majestic. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Naruko smiled. "Looks like the Grand Line is already welcoming us in its own way." At the base of Reverse Mountain, the sea churned wildly as the cruise ship rocked back and forth. "Oh my gosh! It's going to swallow us!" Usopp cried, clutching the mast. Naruko's bright eyes widened as she stared at the enormous whale ahead. She had seen many strange things on her journey, but nothing like this. "That's unbelievably huge. Even the biggest sea creatures don't get that big," she said, gripping the railing. "Turn the ship, quick," Nami shouted. Naruko, Sanji, and Zoro rushed to help, pulling with all their strength while Usopp pushed. But suddenly, crack! The lever snapped in Naruko's hands. She blinked, holding the broken half. How did that even happen?" Sanji groaned. "Now is not the time." Zoro glanced at Naruko. "Can you do something about that whale?" Naruko shook her head firmly. "If I use something too strong, it could hurt us too. We need another way." Before they could think of a plan, the giant whale opened its mouth wide. The current pulled the ship forward. "Well, looks like we're going inside," Zoro muttered. Everything went dark. When the crew came to their senses, they found themselves in the most unexpected place. Is it just me," Sanji said slowly, "or is there a sky inside this whale?" Everyone looked up. Sure enough, above them was a bright, open sky. It didn't make any sense. Naruko tilted her head, amazed. This is kind of incredible. Suddenly, something stirred nearby, a large sea creature emerged from the water below. The crew tensed, ready to defend themselves, but before anything could happen, 3 spears flew in and stopped the creature from causing trouble. The group looked ahead and spotted something even stranger. A house? Usopp whispered. Zoro frowned. Okay. Now that's just confusing. Naruko folded her arms, thoughtful but calm. Let's figure out what's going on before jumping to conclusions. A man stepped out from the house, adjusting his glasses. Hey! Luffy called. What is this place? The man gave him a stern look. How rude. I'm not that old, you know. The crew exchanged awkward glances. Naruko stepped forward with a friendly smile. Sorry about that. We didn't mean any disrespect. We're just a bit surprised. The man nodded slightly. My name is Crocus. I take care of this whale, her name is Laboon. The whale has a name? Nami asked. Of course, Crocus replied simply. Naruko looked around again, clearly fascinated. She must be very special. Before Crocus could explain more, 2 unfamiliar people appeared nearby and began causing a commotion. Naruko raised a hand calmly, and a swirling dark portal appeared briefly, neatly catching and removing the trouble they tried to cause, without harming anyone. Zoro nodded in approval. Nice and clean. Luffy quickly stepped in and handled the situation, making sure no one else got hurt. Crocus then showed them a way out. Follow me, he said. Soon, the crew guided their ship through a passage, and at last, they emerged back into the open sea under a bright sky. Fresh air. Usopp cheered. Naruko stretched and smiled. That was definitely a new experience. They soon turned their attention to the 2 strangers they had encountered earlier. Where are you headed? Nami asked. To a place called Whiskey Peak, the woman replied politely. If you take us there, we'll make sure you're welcomed warmly. Luffy's eyes lit up. Do they have food? Yes, the man said eagerly. Plenty. Then let's go, Luffy declared. Naruko laughed softly and leaned back, creating a soft shadowy hammock to rest in. Wake me when we get there, she said, adjusting her hat. Zoro gave a small nod, silently keeping watch. Later, the crew arrived at Whiskey Peak, where they were greeted with music, laughter, and a lively celebration. Welcome. The townspeople cheered. The atmosphere felt joyful and inviting. There was music, dancing, and plenty of food. Usopp began telling exaggerated stories, making everyone laugh. Naruko smiled as she watched her friends enjoy themselves. Though the celebration was fun, she stayed quietly observant, sensing that something about the place felt a little unusual. Zoro stood nearby, also keeping a careful eye on things. As the evening went on, the crew grew tired from their long journey and the festivities. One by one, they drifted off to sleep. Naruko rested peacefully, her expression calm. Though the night was quiet, the story of their adventure was far from over. Later, around midnight, a quiet hush settled over the harbor town. The moon shone brightly in the sky, casting a soft silver glow over everything below. A woman in a dark hood stepped out from a small building and glanced toward her companions. It took a while, but everyone seems to be fast asleep. This might be our chance, she said calmly. Nearby, her teammates nodded, whispering among themselves about what to do next. They seemed unsure, but determined. Suddenly, a voice called out from above. Well. Looks like something interesting is going on tonight. Everyone looked up in surprise. Standing on a rooftop was Roronoa Zoro, balanced confidently, with a relaxed grin. Beside him sat Naruko Uzumaki, her bright eyes reflecting the moonlight. She rested comfortably on the edge, one leg swinging gently. Naruko tilted her head and smiled playfully. Honestly, I think you're all making this a lot more dramatic than it needs to be. Zoro chuckled. Still curious about who you all are. The group below exchanged uneasy glances. Naruko stood up, stretching lightly. Zoro, how about a little challenge? She said, her tone cheerful. A challenge? He replied. She nodded. Try moving around with your eyes covered. It'll help sharpen your awareness. Zoro smirked. Sounds fun. He tied a cloth over his eyes and carefully stepped down, focusing on his surroundings. Instead of rushing, he moved slowly and thoughtfully, listening to every sound, the breeze, footsteps, even distant waves. The others watched in amazement. Naruko smiled proudly. See? Sometimes slowing down teaches you more than rushing in. Meanwhile, one of the hooded figures approached Naruko quietly. Naruko noticed right away and turned gently. "Hey," Naruko said kindly, "you don't need to be afraid. If something's troubling you, you can just tell us." The girl hesitated, then slowly nodded. I'm actually trying to protect my home," she admitted softly. Naruko's expression softened. "Then we're on the same side." Just then, footsteps echoed nearby as Monkey D. Luffy and Nami arrived. "What's going on?" Nami asked curiously. Naruko smiled. "Looks like we've made a new friend. She's trying to help her kingdom." Luffy's eyes lit up. "A kingdom? That sounds amazing." The group gathered together, and after a bit of explaining, they all agreed to help. There was no arguing, just a shared sense of adventure. "Don't worry," Naruko said warmly. "We'll figure this out together." Soon, the crew prepared to set sail. The sea sparkled under the moonlight as their ship drifted forward. A mysterious woman appeared briefly, offering them guidance for their journey ahead. Naruko accepted it thoughtfully. "Sometimes help comes from unexpected places," she said. As the ship sailed onward, Naruko leaned against the railing, feeling the cool night breeze. "All right everyone," she called out with a bright grin, "how about some training tomorrow? We're going to get even stronger, together." The crew cheered. Later, when they reached a sunny desert land, the heat wrapped around them like a blanket. Naruko stepped off the ship and looked around with curiosity. "Wow! This place feels completely different," she said. Luffy suddenly ran off, laughing. "I'm going to find food." Naruko laughed softly. Some things never change. As the others headed into town, Naruko stayed behind for a moment, relaxing under a shaded spot she created. She gazed at the horizon, thoughtful but calm. "Something tells me a big adventure is coming," she said quietly. But instead of worry, she smiled. Because she knew, no matter what happened, she and her friends would face it together. Some time later. "Naruko." Naruko stirred awake to the sound of voices calling her name. She blinked, still a little sleepy, and sat up, brushing her bright hair away from her face. In the distance, she could see her crewmates hurrying toward the ship, waving their arms and calling out to her. "Huh?" she mumbled, tilting her head. Their words were lost in the wind, and she felt a small spark of irritation. With a quick flick of her hand, a swirling, shadowy portal opened beneath them. In a blink, her friends were gently transported onto the deck of the ship. Everyone looked around, slightly dizzy from the sudden trip. Zoro stumbled a bit, clearly startled, while the others exchanged amused glances. "You could warn us next time," he muttered, crossing his arms as he regained his balance. Naruko grinned sheepishly. "Oops. My bad. What's going on?" she asked, stepping toward Nami before she could start giving orders. "That smoker man showed up earlier," Nami explained quickly, already turning to direct the crew. "But Luffy's brother, Ace, came and helped us. He made sure everything stayed under control." Naruko's eyes widened slightly. "Ace is here?" she thought, surprised. "That's unexpected." She grew thoughtful, her expression turning serious for a moment. Something about it felt important, though she couldn't quite explain why. Sanji noticed her quiet mood and walked over. "Hey, Naruko, are you all right?" he asked gently. "Yeah," she replied, nodding. "I'm just wondering why Ace would travel this far. It must mean something." Sanji gave a small nod before heading back to help the others as the ship prepared to move. Just then, a familiar voice rang out. "There's Luffy." Before anyone could react, Luffy came tumbling onto the deck in his usual energetic way, laughing loudly. That was fun. Naruko couldn't help but smile. Things always seemed livelier when Luffy was around. Moments later, Ace appeared, landing lightly near the railing. He looked around at the crew with a warm smile. "So this is everyone," he said. His eyes met Naruko's for a brief moment. She held his gaze, curious but calm, as if silently asking questions she hadn't spoken aloud. Luffy rushed over to him. "Ace. What are you doing here?" he asked excitedly. Ace chuckled, then his expression softened. "I'm looking for someone," he said. "An old crewmate who made a very serious mistake." The crew listened quietly. Even Naruko stood still, giving him her full attention. "It's something I need to take care of myself," Ace continued. "But don't worry, everything will be all right." Naruko nodded slowly. She didn't press for details. Instead, she offered a small, reassuring smile. "If you need help, you know you're not alone. Ace smiled back, clearly appreciating her words. For a moment, the sea was calm, the sky bright and peaceful above them. The crew stood together on the deck, united and steady, ready for whatever adventures lay ahead. Naruko placed her hands on her hips and looked out toward the horizon, her eyes shining with determination and kindness. "All right," she said confidently. "Let's keep moving forward." And with that, the ship sailed on, carrying them toward new journeys filled with friendship, courage, and hope. Dear YouTube family, that's all for now. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more content. Thank you for your continued support. Regards. 6 Path Weeb.